Hi, my name is Vesa. I'm a Finnish visual artist and a filmmaker, and for the past 3 years I've been on a journey to try and understand of why is it that despite our enormous will as well as the kind of desperate need for change, regardless of our powerful technologies as well as the inherent wisdom inside of all the spiritual traditions cross-culturally, we haven't managed to create a more balanced world for us to share.
Is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds."
When condensed to their essence, the majority of our problems all over the world, usually when publicly debated anyway, they seem to be about energy as well as conflict of interest. A variety of groups of people, of faiths and economies taking their own sides. We've all seen the horrible images of global waste, whether it be about birds being covered in oil, Fukushima leaking, oceans being half plastic, you name it. Not to even mention famine as well as global war. If humanity was to have one diagnosis as a shared experience, one dis-ease, it would most likely be a sense of powerlessness. What this video will suggest is that in order for us to correct this, we will need a personal as well as a societal and a mythological alignment. Through my research, I've come to the conclusion that science and spirituality are ultimately about sustainability, just on different platforms. And my new art piece titled LUX combines them both in mutual appreciation. And this all came about through frustration. It's emotional alchemy of sorts, of how to transform the overwhelming amount of negativity here in the world into at least be balanced with the amount of positive. The pyramid has been the foundational structure for many of our ideas for at least 6,000 years now. We have a long tradition in feeling that in order for some to have power, others need to be without it. Our faiths, science, financial institutions, public nutrition and ways of governing, amongst others, reflect that. Due to the way that we've chosen to organize our current culture, it appears to be very difficult for us to trust each other. We're constantly doubting the motives of our fellow human beings as well as other species. We humans have a peculiar capacity of thinking one thing, acting another, and even saying a third. How can we become a global peaceful society when the majority of us can't even have a functional relationship with our own families, let alone through socio-economical classes or faiths? Most of us are even in pretty bad conflicts with ourselves. It's not up until I looked at space that I got anywhere. Ever since ancient times, from ancient Egypt to my spiritual heritage of Kalevala, or in one way you could say Christianity, all of them have had in common the appreciation, if not the worship, of the sun. Through the sun and our ability to utilize its power technologically now, our new ideologies and institutions could be based upon the circle. Endless abundance, which also happens to be the symbol of the feminine. It's not about shifting the power from one side to the other, but finally to have a balance in between them. A big part of the inspiration for this project came through getting acquainted with the Desertec Foundation, which unfortunately has now been dismantled. Their map showed how it was already possible, through renewables, to produce all of our energy needs. It is an area no bigger than the size of Switzerland that we would need to install in solar panels in Sahara, and we would have limitless abundance. Doing it their way would have been a geopolitical nightmare, including all the problems about storing and transporting the energy. However, Germany managed to produce a peak production of 59% of all of its energy through solar cells in 2014. And it's enlightening to know that 90% of the world's countries get more solar than Germany. It is a fact that we could already produce, through renewables, all of our energy needs locally. All that is needed now is that we allow this to happen. Everybody seems to appreciate the sun. Well, there might be some Norwegian death metal musicians who come on stage and say fuck the sun, but they're, I think it's safe to say, quite a minority. One foundational crucial point in order for this all to manifest into the reality that is now the art piece LUX, was me seeing the documentary Revelation of the Pyramids that dwells into the idea that we might have had a globally much more shared culture before than we seem to be currently aware of. So 2 years ago, I embarked on a journey to Egypt and Mexico, as well as New York, in order to interview a whole bunch of people and visit a lot of places that seem to support this claim. On this journey, I was reading a book by Pekka Ervast, who made the suggestion that the legends of Osiris from Egypt, as well as Lemminkäinen, here from my tradition of Kalevala, had profound similarities. A bit later, in 2014, I contacted the World Body Painting Festival in Austria if it was possible for me to do a performance on their main stage in a summer festival, and they pleasantly said yes. This led for me to laser print on wood a lot of these sacred symbols that were meant to be the foundational, unifying thing that this performance has at its core. A segment of the holistic hour-long performance that we gave on that stage was a ritual made with Viljami and Mintu, whose bodies were covered in gold, that had silver paintings of all the sacred symbols, including the Jedi, on their bodies. Mintu was 8 months pregnant, so it was actually kind of dangerous for her to fly in the first place. We had a shared mental experience with the audience where we aligned ourselves with our ancestors and all the support structures that we've had in our lives that have landed us there. And at the end of it, Viljami and Mintu kind of got married, but not in the traditional sense. They got married to each other through commitment as the best possible parents to this coming child, whether they're going to be spending the rest of their lives together or not. We then welcomed the about to be born child to the world together, and this moved some of the audience members to tears. He's now born, and his name is Viljo, and by this we assumed personal responsibility for life to continue in the best possible manner. We also visited the alleged natural temple of Lemminkäinen in Sipoo in the south of Finland in order for us to paint the symbol of Kalevala as well as the Eye of Ra onto its surface. And the photographs we took of these paintings ended up as layers to the final piece. The symbol of Kalevala, which was made by the artist Gallen Gallela, is made from 2 separate images that were taken in the temple of Karnak in Luxor. They were both ceiling pieces, so this little hole that you see on the left here is the actual sunlight coming from the Egyptian sky. Now, coming out of that symbol, we reveal some traditional images and symbols of Egypt, the Ankh and the Eye of Ra, in order to show that if Kalevala was the little brother, then Egypt would be the big brother. But the larger picture, combining it all into something that is a holistic understanding for the whole of humanity, is the image of the sun. The majority of our spiritual traditions and cultural understandings have always had the sun as an integral and important part of the whole. It is almost too obvious. If it is the one thing about divinity that we seem to cross-culturally agree about, and not to make it an item of worship, but something we all appreciate, we then have a common platform for everybody to build on top of. The societal empowerment comes through technology, of utilizing all of this power that the sun is giving in abundance to us on a daily basis. And the rays of the sun have been made from images of solar panels. And finally, when this art piece is printed onto this 3 meters by 3 meters diameter, the images of the solar panels will then be transformed into real-life solar panels, and the art piece will collect its own energy that it will sustainably illuminate itself with. So this is what I mean by personal, as well as societal, as well as mythological empowerment. Like the entrepreneur of Tesla and SpaceX, Mr. Elon Musk has said, the world has been solar powered for a long time already through photosynthesis. Now we just need to allow for this to be the way that we produce energy for the whole of humanity as well. Pretty much every government in the world have a lot of improvement to do with regards to their renewable energy policies. And this is certainly not slandering the US, but it does seem that it requires a lot of energy. They have an abundance of solar in their country, and their foreign policy as well as their energy policy seems to be very closely related. Plato's cave is an old analogy at this point, but funnily enough, almost literally true in this case. So I don't know, we might want to think about coming out of that cave already. While it is true that almost every religion seems to have in their core the understanding that you should do unto others of what you wish for yourself, I don't believe this is going to become a reality before we have equal means to produce our energy. Now, could it be that the only truly altruistic thing that we currently know is the sun? It's 24/7 on, and for millions of years hasn't asked for anything in return. Talk about philanthropy to people who don't currently present themselves as exactly appreciative of the investment. Now in the information age, we seem to have an enormous amount of data, but not really a clear direction as to where it is that we're headed. So my humble suggestion is that by removing this cognitive dissonance about how we manufacture our energy and why, we wouldn't still have a Shangri-La in our hands. We wouldn't have a utopia. I don't think life functions that way. We wouldn't be void of conflict. However, we would be leaving a much more balanced world for our kids to make their own mistakes in. It still allows for all the various points of views, all the traditions to exist. It just means that all of them, through their own way of looking at it, are empowered, are feeling empowered. And this allows for all of us to be fruitful. This allows for everything to exist and be appreciated and respected, because we don't need to take from anyone in order to already feel like we're full. Oppenheimer was obviously full of regret about making the atom bomb, and no wonder. It was energy directed the wrong way. Now imagine if we were the generation responsible for harnessing the power of the sun and allowing life to flourish on an unprecedented scale, never known by humanity before. Imagine the story we could be telling our children and our grandchildren about the epic hero's journey that we did together as a species in order to allow for them to have a prosperous future instead of the one that seems to be glooming from around the corner right now. Imagine how good you would feel telling that story.